Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello. Shit. Well, hopefully that is working. So I had to take a break for a little while. I'm concerned the mic isn't working. Seems to be working. Sorry about those snaps. That's how fast it can happen, you guys, right? There's no process that can bring you to enlightenment. It's already here, right? And that's what I say. The title. Finally, the title, right, has something to do with what I talk about. The garden is here, right? This is your connection. This is your connection to nature, right? And nature is a word that is, has been, it's like you can't even say that shit anymore, So all of a sudden you're a hippie. Right? You got to ground, man. Get your feet in the dirt. But it's your connection to nature. But I just wanted to say that because we're going to talk about the garden today, right? And false polarity, the fall of man, false rhythm, artificial rhythm, right? Artificiality, made up shit, right? False construct, right? False program, all of that. Okay. But first we're going to stand, right? And so if you're fresh, right, know that you listen to all the videos from the beginning, right? And I explain the Qigong. The purpose behind the Qigong is to get you into a meditative state and teach you that it's possible, right, to instantaneously feel that connection, right? And that meditation is not something that is divided out from the day, from life. It is life, right? Meditation is operating from the heart, from love, from a position of love, which is non-polar, right? And so I talk about polarity a lot because it's the way to, it gives you the vocabulary to talk about the transcendental aspect of the totality. Okay. And so that's the purpose of this. But if you listen from the podcast from the beginning to the end, and then you start on the YouTube videos, it will provide you with a fairly fast access, right? And this whole thing that I'm teaching is that everything that is required is inside, right? There's nothing external required, right? For you to make that psychological transformation, which is the realization, right? That all of our society runs on a lie. So we begin with the Qigong so that you can experience the feeling, right, of connection to source. And when you connect, right, then your mind has space in it for the new to enter. And so there's no, it's also teaching, right? The teachings are learning to learn, right? Is that you learn to learn. You don't learn content. You learn to be able to take in the new, right? And you can't take in the new if you have any preconceived notions about anything. Right, so we stand first. I'm going to line up with the camera. I won't be completely lined up with the screen, right? But your feet. Oh, I'm in the shop today, by the way. That's my dad's wood shop, and since he has passed, it My brothers and I use it, and my cousin, to make shit, right? It's just one of the things. Wood is just one of the things of the materials that I can make things in. All the materials, all of them, right? And so when you are able to learn how to learn, then you can take on new information a lot quicker. And it permits you that confidence, right? When you're approaching something new, to actually, it removes the doubt and the fear, right? When you let go of the past, which are your preconceived notions, right? And so if you say shit like, I'm not good at that, right, then it becomes true, right? So we do the standing first, and feet shoulder width apart, straight, right? Straight forward and straight back. You bend your knees to obscure your toes from your eyes when you look down, right? Turn your hips under without flexing your glutes, right? And you do that by pushing your lumbar out to the back. And you don't have to flex any muscles to do that. You just have to straighten your spine. So you push out your lumbar to the back, and your upper spine, your thoracic, you push forward and you drop your chin, right? And you extend your spine upward like it has a string attached to it. And keep that in mind, right? Because that is actually the key to this whole thing, is the extension of your spine. So when you extend, you create space, right? In between your vertebra, right? And when you create space, that synovial fluid can ascend, right? And that's what you want. There's all kinds of factors and elements, but just doing it, and you don't have to do it perfect, works. And it repairs your energetic system. And when you repair your energetic system, you repair your body. So that's why we do it. And also to open the space for the new, right? It tricks you into getting into a meditative state. So drop the chin, push out the lower spine, push forward the thoracic, and then your hands are here in front of your navel. And this is just the standing. This is all that is required for Qigong, although there's a lot more to it. There's movement, but the standing is actually the foundation. It gives you your foundation. So it's 3 positions that we go through, and I do 18 breaths, and then plus a few more on the end, because you really don't want to end on 18. But it's just 3 breaths per section. So it's 6 breaths, right, per each position of the hands. And we'll go through it. Let's do it. Let's do the thing. Julie, do the thing. We all have to do it together. So, okay, hands in front of the navel, right? And you breathe in with the yogic breath, right, which is a silent breath. If you breathe so you can't hear it, then you're breathing slowly enough. So let's do a few more. Practice that silent out breath, right? Where you, instead of collapsing on the out breath, like you do when you're stretching, right? You extend upward, right? Your spine extends upward. So it's good to feel that out breath, right? That is where everything lies, right? The in breath obviously is important, but the out breath, right? The out breath, silent out breath, extension of the spine upwards, and you can feel the silence. You can feel the silence. Uh, you can be in it, and that silence is the space, right? That is the void. That is meditation. That is pure love, right? And as I've said, love has no polarity, and we're going to talk about again polarity a fucking again today, right? Gonna go hard in the paint on this one. It's probably gonna upset some people. Hopefully it does, right? And hopefully it gets you to consider, right, that what we've been told is a lie, right? And there's only one conspiracy. There's only one, right? There's only one problem. There's only one solution, right? So we don't even need to talk about all these other fucking things, right, that have been done to us, because as we'll find out, it's part of the fucking program, right? Our response to it is exactly what they want, right? So the garden, right? The Garden of Eden, right? That's what I'm referring to. That fable, right, in the Bible, right? We all know about it, right? It's the way that generally, in the majority, we have come to understand it is an inversion of the actual, right? It's a misdirection so that we don't fucking realize what the fuck is happening, right? Like I said, there's only one conspiracy, and it began right fucking then, right? So, as far as the timeline goes, right, how far back that was, it's definitely older than the timeline of the Bible, but we could describe it as the fall of man, right? It is the ejection of man, right? Humans from the Garden of Eden, right? And so when we speak of the garden, right, we have to be considering it as nature, right? It is nature and the laws of nature, right? Natural law. All of this shit is buzzwords, right, at this point. And so I ask you, right, to not fucking to use any goggles to see the image that I'm painting, right? It is no filter, right? So don't hear these words and start thinking you know what I'm talking about, right? Because you haven't heard this shit before. Maybe once or twice from like some channeled fucking entity or something, Um, so what happened in the Garden of Eden? What happened? Well, the story, we'll just keep it simple, right? There's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That is the title of the tree that produces the fruit in which Eve ate from, right? And so knowledge of good and evil, right? It is not knowledge just knowledge. It is not uh, knowledge of evil, and it's not knowledge of good. You notice that it has the polarity, right? It has good and evil in it, right? So, um, polarity is unity in disguise, and good and evil is no different, right? So this is what we need to really fucking lean into, is that good and evil are a polar relationship, right? They require each other to exist. But here's the thing that everyone's missing, right? You hear people talk about this, like Buckminster Fuller, for example, talked about this, Alan Watts, everyone, and then all kinds of people in the modern age have talked about it, right? But I haven't heard anyone fucking say, right, that good and evil is an unnatural polarity, right? It's an artificial polarity. It operates on the same rules, right? Which is one requires the other to exist, right? So being good, right, requires evil to exist. If you identify as good, then you are defining yourself as against evil, right? So they require each other to exist, and they operate in a rhythm, just like all natural polarities do, right? Which is good will be in the superior position, right? While evil is below, and then evil will rise to superior, and good will drop below, right? Are you following? So it follows all of the rules of the rules of the properties of waves, basically, right? Right. That's polarity is built into wave structure, right? There's no peak without a trough. You can't have a peak of a wave without a trough. And all you fucking electrical engineers, shut the fuck up right now, because I know a standing wave. I know about standing waves. You can create a standing wave on an oscilloscope, and that is not a non-polar wave, right? That is just a truncated wave, right? It's just clipped. All right. So think about now, to understand this, right? That polarity is unity in disguise. All of the other polarities, right? They can't exist without the other side, positive and negative, right? In magnetism, there's no magnetic monopole, you guys. There is no magnetic monopole, right? There's no light without dark, right? There's no up without down. You know what I mean? So good and evil are the same. They're the same thing. And so if you identify as good, then you are evil, because you require evil to exist. This is what you fucking have to wrap your head around. So all of this, some of y'all will be like, oh, that's moral relativism. And it's not, right? Because this is the difference between inferior virtue and superior virtue, right? This is the principle of Wu Wei, right? From the Tao. This is the teachings of the Tao, right? This is what the Hermetic principles teach. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. That inferior virtue, right, is hyper fixated on virtuosity, right, which is a comparison, right, to what exists out there. It is a reference to what is bad, right? Inferior virtue asks, what will others think of this? Will they see this as good, right? That's inferior virtue. Superior virtue doesn't ever consider whether it's good or not. It just is, right? And so this is the core of my message, because this is how you break down your inner conflict, right? And when you break down your inner conflict, you recognize that there is no separation, right? On the inside or the outside, right? There is no ending at the end at your skin, right? That is not the ending of yourself, right? Yourself fucking is in a mundane sense connected and interdependent with all of the other things, right? And that is the mundane, that is the material aspect. But also, right, in an energetic sense, your energetic body extends outward. And how far outward? Fucking to infinity, right? Because waves just go out. Are you following? Sorry, I have a runny nose. It's all windy and dusty here. Just an excuse. So I'm just demonstrating that when this is how you let go of your psychological sense of self, right? Because that is ego, right? Another fucking word that is going to make you fucking do shit in your mind, and just let it be what it is. It is the identification of self, right? The recognition of a separate self, okay? And it's a measurement, right? And how do you measure that, right? Through comparison and reference. Right? So when you identify as good, right? Right, as a good person, a good moral person, it's because you're against evil, right? And so how would you define yourself, right? If there wasn't evil in the world, right? How would you define what you're against, right? A lot of people would have no cause all of a sudden if the opposition would suddenly disappear, right? What do we do now, right? And, you know, and this is easily fucking demonstrated with this whole left-right thing in politics, right? There's no right without the left. And so if you're on the right, right, and you identify hard with the right, then you're being fooled, right? And if you're on the left and you identify hard with that side, then you're being fooled, right? You're not recognizing that polarity is unity in disguise, right? And so the whole point that I'm making, right, is that good and evil is not a natural polarity. It's an unnatural polarity. It's made up, right? And it only operates if everyone believes that it's true. It's just like in a gunfight, right? Previous to anyone drawing down, right? As soon as that first person draws down, everyone else fucking draws down, right? You guys hearing me? Right? Once that first gun is drawn, everyone else is fucking going to draw that gun. And so that's right. Then you have a gunfight, and that is our fucking civilization. Right? Everyone assumes that everyone else is a potential threat, and they prepare for that. And that makes it perpetuate. Right? And it's an unnatural, it's an artificial, it's a made up polarity. So it's false. It's a false polarity. And this is what ejected us from the Garden of Eden, because it is unnatural, right? We have separated ourselves from the natural rhythm, right? The rhythm of nature, natural law, right? We have divided ourselves out from natural law. And that's what sin is. That's what sin means. Look up the fucking definition, all right? It just means to separate. Right? And so we are not, our souls are not born into a sinful body, right? Right? We are born into a sinful civilization, right? A separate from nature civilization, a civilization that runs on an artificial polarity, right? And so as long as we operate within that rhythm, right, we are drawn into the rhythm, right? Once you make if you declare a position inside of that polar relationship, then you are in that I keep saying rhythm but it's a cause and effect, right? Is that once you declare yourself as, you create a polarity. Once you declare yourself as on a side, right, you instantly create the opposite side. And so you create a rhythm with that. And so this is how you, right, recognizing this, right, is how you can surrender your psychological sense of self, right? And there's other ways to describe this. Um, so, a as I was discussing before, right? It's a measurement, right? It's a measurement of where you are, what you are, how you define yourself, right? Your identity, right, is a measurement. It's a comparison. Copy? And so that's a limitation, right? Defines the end of something, right? When you measure something, you limit it, right? You limit it, and it's divided out from everything else. And so what this artificial polarity does is ensure a perpetuation of the division of consciousness, right? And that division, right? That separateness drives the whole thing forward. It creates the cause and effect, right? It creates the rhythm of our civilization. And if you look at our civilization, it is a repeating pattern, right? You can't deny that. You can't argue with that, right? Try to argue with that. Fucking put a fucking comment in, right? If you got an issue with it. Our civilization repeats the same pattern over and over and over again, right? It's this rhythm, right? This artificial rhythm that is separate from the natural rhythms, the natural polarities. So how do you extricate yourself from that, right? That is beginning with the end in mind, right? That is what we do, right? Each of us individually, we stop defending our psychological sense of self because it's a never-ending battle, right? It is a Band-Aid on your leaky boat, right? And every time you fucking tape that with duct tape, another leak springs up. It's a lifelong proposition that never ends. And that's exactly what our society is, right? It repeats the same cycle. And you'll recognize that as this defending of an identity is a never-ending prospect. And you will find yourself in a superior position and then an inferior position, right? You'll be going through a rhythmic cycle that repeats itself. And so on aggregate, that's what our society does on a large scale. It's just a much larger wave, right? And so this is Groundhog Day. This is like, how stupid do we have to fucking be to repeat the same fucking pattern for 12,000 years? You know? So the fall of man is the ejection. We ejected ourselves, right? We divided ourselves out from nature, right? That's the fall of man, and it creates an artificial rhythm, right? That has to be constantly maintained, right? In order for it to continue, because we will fall back into the natural rhythm naturally, because that's what we are already. We're already fully evolved. We don't need to evolve, right? We don't need to do anything. We don't need to do anything. Everything is here, is present, right? But recognition that the recognition is knowing who you are, what you are, right? And that's why it says, know thyself at the Oracle of Delphi, right? Knowing thyself is not defining, right, a limit to yourself, right? Knowing thyself is recognizing that there is no limit, that it's unlimited, it's immeasurable, right? And when you do not measure, then you become immeasurable, right? Which is unlimited. And so the potential rises to infinity. And on aggregate, right? Imagine if we didn't measure, right? If we didn't worry that there was a limited supply, like always measuring the supply, right? And making sure you get your portion before someone else takes it. Right? We all know this. That's the fucking scarcity model of value, right? And to understand, right, when you're unlimited, when you're immeasurable, you understand that value is infinite. And us, people living, uh, only adds to the supply. It's just constantly adding, right? And so that's we begin with the end in mind, right? Which is that, which is we make this psychological transformation. We invert our conception of value by knowing that there's an infinite supply, so there's no need to fight for your portion, right? Also knowing that our nature, right? So that's what the artificial polarity does, right? It negates our true nature, right, and tries to insert a the idea that our nature is to be selfish, right? That our nature is competitive, that is some kind of social Darwinism, that the survival of the fittest, right? And again, I've talked about the survival of the fittest thing in society. Is like it doesn't. That's not how it fucking works, right? Because the quote fittest, right? If you're going with that model, right, are the upper strata, right? Everyone else still fucking survives, right? They still survive. So it's not survival of the fittest, right? It doesn't even fucking make sense. But what this artificial rhythm does is creates divided consciousness, right? In the collective and internally. You're constantly measuring yourself, right, relative to others, right, in this competition mode. And so that's right. So say there's an evil act that is done, right? And then you are going to respond to it. You're going to resist to it and you're going to fight against it, right? That's a division right there, right? You've divided yourself out, right? So that's how it works. Black moves first, evil makes the first move. And when we fucking respond to it, then we're in, right? We're in the fucking rhythm. And so we have to not. And that's what makes it so hard, I suppose, right? Is because injustice is so hard to fucking swallow, right? But if we want to remove injustice and imbalance from the world, we have to stop engaging. And we have to recognize that um, that our nature is not to compete. Our nature is not to be selfish, right? Our nature is to actually share value with others, to exchange value with others. That is what we're built to do. And think about that for a second, right? Competition isn't the motivation for innovation. Motivation for innovation is not competition, right? And that's one way that they tell us the lie, right? That without competition, nothing would fucking improve, right? That's fucking false. What fucking is the motivation is people wanting to create something new to share with others, right? To be of value to others. That's what creates innovation. And it can't happen if we're all one mind. So that's the contradiction, right? People need their own individual laboratory in order to create something new. If we all had a hive mind, then there would be nothing, there would be no place to go, right, on your own in order to create something new. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is what we do. We exchange value with others, right? And we require our own fucking space in order to do that. If everyone had the same mind, there would be no innovation because it would all be the one thing doing the thing, you know? And it's theorized, I think I theorized this fucking shit, is that the Neanderthals tool making, right? If you look at the Neanderthals tool making, it didn't change for 200,000 years. Same fucking tools, really hard to make, crude looking, but very difficult to make. No fucking innovation, right? And some people, including myself, think that the Neanderthals had a sort of hive mind, right? And it was only the introduction of this different kind of human beings, right? That all were individuals, you know, that had their own individual laboratory that started to change. And it could be that it was the influx of the genetic material, right? It changed the fucking mind, right, of the Neanderthal. But that's just an example, right? And it's an example of how a creature with one mind does not fucking, a tool-making creature, right, that has a hive mind cannot innovate because there's no separation, right? So, right, this is the contradiction. So you know thyself, right? When you know thyself, you know that there is no separation, right? There is no division. There is no divided consciousness, right? But you also understand that as a collective, the only way that we can survive, right, as tool-making creatures is if each of us has something of value to provide to others, because we, as a collective, interact as like one entity with the environment. We're not like animals that all are doing the same thing, that type of animal, right? We are all specialists. We're all specialists, right? And so our nature is to be the cells of the body of humanity, right? We all can't do the same thing. And so we all have different fucking roles that we do. We all have different gifts that we're born with. So that's why I think it's so difficult to understand. And I hope this is making sense, right? You have to permit the superposition of the individual and the collective, right? But also understand that there is no individual without the collective, right? There's no individual without relationship. There's no individual in a vacuum, right? And so it's both things at once. And when you let go of your psychological sense of self, right? When you let go of protecting your identity, then you understand, right, that it is the collective, that it is the exchange of value between all of us that permits us to live. And so in this scarcity model, in this artificial rhythm of good and evil, right, there is a destruction of our potential, right? There is a rhythm of creation and then destruction, right? And that is not a fucking efficient way to move forward as in a sentient species, as a being that has the divine spark, right? Our purpose is to come here to create novelty in the universe, right? To embellish the universe. And it is a fucking badass way to do it. And that's why the fucking gods, right, are jealous of us, right? Because we get to do that, right? We get to do that. On a higher dimensional level, the manipulations are all fucking ethereal, right? We get to fucking manipulate matter and create new. And so this artificial rhythm, right, we have to abandon it in order to move forward, because it has a limit. This behavior has a limit. We are in a wheel, right, that repeats itself, a cycle, right? But the radius of that wheel is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? The Ouroboros is running out of tail. And that's the singularity. That's the point at which it's do or die. And we're approaching it, right? This shit ain't gonna go on forever. The only way it goes on forever is if we fucking get fucking hybridized with technology and get put into a fucking metaverse, right? A universe inside of a universe, right? And it's already here. And this is what I say, right? This artificial fucking rhythm, this artificial polarity is the metaverse, and it's installed in our minds, right? But it has a limit, like I'm saying. And so the objective of the adversary, right? Whatever it is, whoever it is that is trying to orchestrate this outcome, is trying to perpetuate this for all time, right? And that's not a way to move forward. So that's a limiting aspect, right? That's an ending, right? That's an ending. And also self-destruction is an ending. Those are two outcomes we want to avoid. And so the third outcome is to moving forward in a dynamic fashion, right? And the only way to do that is to recognize who we are, what our purpose is. And so when I say begin with the end in mind, first, right? And it's kind of ironic, begin with the objective in mind, right? Begin with the objective. And the objective is unlimited, right? We want to have this unlimited aspect to ourselves. And so when you don't measure, you become immeasurable, and that's not a limit, right? Will is a measurement. The effort of will is a measurement. And so everyone talks about this fucking willpower shit, right? And that ain't it, right? That's a limitation, right? That's a limitation. To become unlimited, you relinquish your will, right? And that doesn't mean you don't do anything. That just means you stop fucking being attached to some kind of outcome that you have in mind. And that's why it's difficult to talk about, right? Because I say begin with the objective in mind, but the objective is to become unlimited. That's what I need you guys to understand, right? The objective is to reject. The objective is to reject the false polarity, right? And you can't do it inside of it. So when you stop defending your psychological sense of self, when you stop protecting your identity, right? When you stop thinking there's anything to defend yourself from, is when you recognize, first you have to recognize that we are all the thing. We are all the same thing. And that because we live by exchanging value with each other, we require each other in order to live. And so this competition thing is just it saps half of our power, right? And it's a repeated cycle. So how do we do that? You operate from a position of non-polarity, right? Non-duality, right? This is non-duality. Think of it in terms of polarity, right? You don't fucking take a polar position. And how do you do that? You operate from a non-polar position, right? And Walter Russell describes it as, if you think about polarization as a pendulum, right? Swings back and forth. There's no swinging without both sides, right? It's a polar relationship, right? It goes past zero, right? To the positive, to the negative, to the positive, right? That's a polarity. So if you want to operate in a non-dual fashion, you're on the fulcrum, right? You don't take that position. You don't take either position. You operate from the fulcrum. And so how do you do that? You relinquish your sense of self. You stop measuring, right, what it is that you think you want to do or who you think you are. You stop comparing, you stop competing, right? And so that becomes unlimited. The potential becomes unlimited. I hope this is making sense. Is this making sense? Is this making sense? Sam? Flight risk? Is this fucking making sense? But you can see how it's difficult to talk about because it requires a superposition, right? A superposition of both states at once. And so when you measure something, it's good. The quantum mechanics example is perfect, actually. It's fucking perfect, right? So when you measure something, you collapse a wave function, right? You make it from a wave potentiality to a particle, right? And so you always permit the pure potentiality. You never measure something, right? And that is general semantics too, right? You never can use the word is, like this is that, right? You always say, well, this is how it seems to be at the moment, right? And so if you want to learn, you never are definitive when you go in to learn something, right? You're always open to basically saying that what I know now has the potential to be false, or new information could make all of this fucking irrelevant. right? So the objective, right? First, that it is the relinquishment of the psychological sense of self, operating from the fulcrum, right? And when you operate from the fulcrum, you're operating from a position of love because love is nonpolar. And if you think love and hate is a polar relationship, then that is the same as good and evil. It is an artificial construct, right? Hate isn't required to define love. A baby doesn't hate, but a baby loves, right? A baby has no experience, right? Experience of the world is required to define hate, right? A baby can love, but a baby doesn't hate, right? So love is nonpolar. Love is nonpolar. When you're on the fulcrum, you're operating from a position of love, and that position is no need to defend it. There's no need to defend that position. So, yeah, I'm just going to finish up because I'm running out of juice on the battery. I thought I was plugged in. I guess I'm not. And I'm not going to fucking fuck with it right now. But to conclude, right? If we can operate from that non-dual position, the non-polar position, from the fulcrum, from a position of love, then we can create an organization that supports the exchange of value, the sacred exchange of value, which is our nature, and it won't be corrupted. Any organization we create without that positioning will be corrupted, right? It's just like how if you guys do yoga or whatever, and your yoga teacher starts talking about how their fucking lineage is better than another lineage, and they've missed the fucking point. That's a corrupted system. Despite yoga still being awesome for your body, there's no psychological transformation occurring there, right? No matter how much fucking yoga you do, if you're claiming your lineage is better than another lineage, then you've missed the point. Are you copy, right? So first operate from the fulcrum, from a position of love, right? And then we can create an organization that supports the pure fucking exchange of value where no one is excluded. And then the fucking value pool just fucking climbs like exponentially way faster than it does now, instead of being fucking sapped by destruction and war and fucking conflict, right? Are you following? Does it fucking make sense? So that's the objective, right? Is to support the exchange of value, the sacred exchange, which is our nature, right? And so I know how to do that. I know how to build that fucking thing, right? But I ain't gonna build it, right? I ain't gonna build it unless other people can make this psychological transformation also, right? And so that's what we have to do. First things first, right? It's like how Jordan Peterson says, clean your room, except he's got it backwards, right? He's like, become well adjusted to society and then try to fix society. That's so fucking stupid. Everything he says, all that gold he has, just negated by that one fucking thing, right? Don't fucking say shit, right? Until you get your shit together, bro, right? And then when you get your shit together, then, oh, what do I got to say? Nothing, right? Because it's working for me. So it's the real version of that, which is clean your mind, right? Clean your fucking mind and operate from your heart, right? From a position of love. And don't wear any fucking filters in order to see the world, right? Don't operate from reference to the past, self-reference, right? Self-reference repeats the same pattern. When you see something, don't use any lenses to see it. Completely no filter. Don't even fucking name it. Don't measure it. Don't even say what you think it is. Just observe it, and you can see it, everything for what it is, right? So that's what we have to do. We all have to be operating from that position, right? From a no filter perception position. I like how that sounds. And so we use our entire perception apparatus. It's not like our left brain isn't important. We cognitively need to understand our fucking inspiration, how it can be of value to others, right? Left brain is important, but not only left brain, right? The entire perception apparatus, right? And so this is our bridge to the transcendental. This is, if it's operating in its full potential, then you can perceive in a whole fashion, in a holy fashion, in a holy manner, right? And then we can create an organization that won't be corrupted. And then we can move forward as a species, as, a sentient fucking divine spark being, right? We can move forward instead of destroying ourselves or getting caught in this loop, right? In this loop. And so look up a Game of Life guy wrote a program in the 70s called the Game of Life, and it had initial conditions. You set up the initial conditions and you press run, and it would just play itself out. And it would either create a fucking loop situation, which is kind of what we have, right? Repeated pattern, right? Or it would wink out of existence, or it would create this beautiful structure that's constantly changing and moving into the future. And so that's what we need to do. And that's what would be possible. So the objective is that, to be unlimited, right? To not limit ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to stop measuring ourselves, right? Become immeasurable, right? Right. Okay, guys. So that's the live for now. But listen to the podcast if you're fresh from the beginning, right? It's a progression. I'm not saying I know shit. I was learning shit while I was doing it. I started it 3 years ago. And I interviewed a few people to see how people that I thought were intelligent or smart can manage this information. And mostly they fail. So you can see that, right? I ain't judging because everyone does it. And I ain't saying that I don't do it. This thing that I'm talking about, this non-dual thing, is a switch, right? It happens like that. And it can be switched off, right? And you have to switch it back